feet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Oh, take dude.
It's randomly moving north, south, east, west, just random. You know, just stopping, going the other direction. Like you could do with a helicopter, but it's a little bit more abrupt. It looks like a 40-foot long tic-tac with no wings.
Fravor says he and his four-man team tracked the object for several minutes until it just disappeared.
Welcome to this episode of The Soul Trap. Many times we have discussed information about UFO encounters. On today's episode, we discuss the experience. And we discuss it with a man who claims to have experienced the Tic-Tac and the Gimbal UFOs long before we ever knew about them. Welcome to this episode of The Soul Trap as we talk with Dave and his experience of the third kind.
Dead or alive, you are coming with me.
We were talking the other day. I just want to pick up from the beginning. We're gonna just leave it at Dave. That's what we're gonna leave. We're not gonna say where Dave is. I think most of my listeners are gonna know that you're not from Mississippi, but we want to. We'll be able to black out everything later on. So it's just you and I talking. So let me set the tone. It wasn't just a month or so ago, just a little bit ago, where all of a sudden the Pentagon comes out and says, hey, you know that TikTok video? Yeah, you know the one we kind of denied a little bit and hemmed and hawed? Yeah. Oh, well, it actually is technically an unidentified flying object. We don't know what it is. And everybody said, wow, that's the first time we've ever seen something like that. Well, you're sitting there, not in Mississippi, going, no, wait a second, I've seen it. Tell us your story.
Okay, so I saw the gimbal craft from the Tic-Tac videos that David Fravor made famous, and we all see on the Pentagon. But my story starts much earlier. When I was 13 years old, I was asleep. It was about 3-4 o'clock in the morning. And I got woken up by a very strange hum. And this hum was all around me. It's a very strange frequency, but it was enough to wake me up from deep sleep. So I awake, I hear this hum, and I think, where's that coming from? So I get up, and I think it's coming from outside. So I look out the window, and you'll see in my picture that as I look out the window, there is a black craft in the distance, maybe about half a mile, travelling from the right to left as I view. And I think to myself, what is that? So as I think to myself, wow, what is that? The craft going from right to left as I view stopped and came straight towards my window.
Okay, now, let me... this craft was far enough away that it would not have just in the natural realm noticed a young boy standing at his window. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely.
Okay, so it was almost as if both with the sound and with what you were seeing that it wanted to see you, or it wanted to be seen by you. Am I leading you, or is that something you would say is true?
Yeah, I think it was emitting this vibration or noise as far and as wide as it could, waiting for someone to respond. It was probably looking for somebody who resonated back.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So when you said, and I'm just going to, as we go along, kind of pick through this, when you said it emitted a hum and you heard a hum, you said kind of all around you. Was it something external, or was it something likewise internal that you were hearing? If you understand what I'm saying.
It was a bit of both. I could hear it in my head and I could hear it in my ears. It was, when I say all around, I mean it was outside and it was inside of me. You could almost feel the hum. a bit like a speaker. If you put your hand on a speaker, you can feel the vibration. It was a little bit like that.
Wow. Okay. All right. So you see it. It sees you. What happened next?
So the craft starts coming towards me, and as it's getting closer and closer and closer, the very first thought I had was, "So UFOs are real. This thing is not from this world."
Yeah.
It was incredible, really. It was Christmas pudding shapes and not quite circular, bit of a wider base. It was gloss black. You could see your face in it. It was so shiny, so liquid black. And at the bottom of the craft, there is what I could only describe as, if you look at lava coming down a volcano, then under the craft was lava. It was molten metal. So you had the contrast of the black, shiny, out of this world looking craft, but underneath this hot, glowing embers is what I saw.
But from the best of your perception, you would say that it was a solid object.
Yes, it was a solid object.
Okay. All right. So it comes to you. You're observing this. You're now sitting here going, "Huh, this is real." What happens next?
So at the time, I was very interested in cars and driving. I was at the age, 13, where couldn't wait to drive a car. And I remember thinking to myself, "Wow, I'd love to see the controls of that."
Hmm.
And as I literally just said those words, the uh, the inside of the craft was shown to me in my mind. It was almost as if I was stood at the edge of the craft looking in, and I could see the whole thing.
Hmm.
But I knew I was still in my house, and I knew the windowsill was in front of me. But my eyes were full of the interior of the craft.
Hmm. And that happened based upon simply a wish, an initiated thought that you had about what you wanted.
That's right. Yeah, I just wanted to see how it worked.
Uh-huh.
I was just very keen. So, like, how does that? How do they drive that kind of thing?
Uh-huh.
And then I was shown the inside of the craft.
Were you aware of the beings that were inside the craft? In other words, were they as you were observing them, were they aware that you were watching them, or was it more something kind of remote, as if you were a spectator and they weren't even aware that you were there?
No, they were very aware, because I asked to look inside. Then I got shown inside. But as I was looking inside the craft, I wasn't looking at the controls. I was looking at the people. I was
Hmm.
thinking, wow, there's three people pretty much in a line, and they're looking forwards in the craft. And as I was looking at those people, thinking, wow, what are they wearing? How are they dressed? Everything you would think of when you saw something like this. They actually said to me, "I thought you wanted to see the controls."
Okay. So they were still then at that point in your from your take responding to an ongoing thought process that you were having. In other words, there was
Yes,
a connection between your mind and their mind.
100%, absolutely.
Hmm.
So then I remember thinking, yes, you're right. And as my eyes went from them across the width of the craft and then to the left in my picture, I could actually see through the craft. So although it was black, you could see through it from the inside out. And you can see in my picture, I could actually see the houses
Hmm.
through the craft.
Yeah, I'm looking at that right now. So it was a solid object, but you were yet able to see through that.
That's right, yeah. So it must have been translucent on the inside.
Yeah, that's pretty fascinating, right? When you think about that, what that is. Now, when you were on the craft, were you feeling? Obviously, you're saying that you still felt like you were physically in your room, but yet you were on the craft. So, was there any
That's right.
sensation of? Did you have a sensation of motion, or anything like that?
No, because I guess I really did feel like I was still in my house, but it was a real sense of wonder. You kind of you're so shocked that you're looking inside of a craft. You don't kind of think about motion. You know, you're overwhelmed with the feeling that this is just the madness. This is crazy. Is it real? You're pinching yourself.
Uh huh. Okay,
So
so
so I
So how
I was
did
going to
that
say,
event end? Oh, I'm sorry. Go right ahead.
yeah. So as I scan across the craft and I'm looking through the walls of the craft to outside. I see the controls, and it was a rectangular square with all different coloured lights on it. I mean, it made no sense to me. I didn't have a clue what I was looking at.
Hmm.
It was just just, and as I was looking at the console, for lack of a better word, um, um, my view closed down, and I was looking at the craft from my room again in the hole. I was no longer looking inside.
Okay. So how did that encounter then end? Did they leave anything with you? Any kind of message? Any kind of physical encounter? Or was it just something where it ended and there you were?
To be honest, I can't remember. What I remember is coming out of the ship, if you like, and looking at it again from the outside and seeing, wow, how wonderful this craft is. And I remember seeing the molten underneath. And as it went away very, very slowly um, towards the distance, I remember thinking, I wonder where they're going now. And they said, we're going to explore.
Hmm. So again, they're still communicating with you even though you're not in the ship, and it's an immediate boom boom. You're thinking they're responding to that.
As soon as you think it, you have the response, literally that nanosecond afterwards.
Okay. So then that's you're how old now? You're 13?
13, yes.
Okay. So did that event substantially change your life, your frame of reference, your metaphysical outpour view? What changed about that after that?
It did. Um, what must have happened in hindsight, looking back, is that somehow they switched on something in my brain which made me a lot more intuitive. And as the years ticked by, as I went through my younger teenage into my later teenage years, it became stronger and stronger. And there are lots of examples I could give you where I can share. I can give examples of how that intuition worked. But for example, I remember on my 18th birthday, we ended up going to a casino, lots of friends, and I ended up at the blackjack table. And it was the first time I had ever went to a casino, and we're playing blackjack, and I kept winning. So obviously, you've got to get 21, as everyone knows.
Yeah.
And I was on 17, and I would ask for a card, and people going, "Oh, you're asking for a card," and I would get a 3, and I'd win. And I had 18, and I was asking for a card, and I'd get a 2 or a 3, and I kept on winning, and I kept on winning. And I didn't realize at the time, but behind me there was a group of people looking at me, and some people were actually betting on my own cards that with their money to
Hmm.
try and to win, because I just kept on winning.
So, and
Um,
you had the sensation that the next card was the card you needed. You almost
that's
knew
right.
that.
That's
Okay.
right.
So you
So
had all
at
those
one
kind of
time,
events that would happen in life, just a real, maybe like a sixth sense type of a thing. Something you didn't know how to
that's right.
explain it, but you were aware of things that you had not previously been aware of.
That's right. It was like a sixth sense. That's a very good interpretation.
Okay. So you're 13, life is going on. You had not had any more visits so far as you know, or more encounter. Take us to the next profound encounter. And was it the same people? Just tell us that story. Same people, same event. What happened next in the progression?
So the next event is I'm now 44 years old, and I'm in my garden, and I'm pottering around. It's lunchtime. I remember that, and it's a bright sunny day, blue sky, and I get the overwhelming feeling to look up. And it's the same sort of feeling. There was no hum this time as it was with the previous craft, but it was an absolutely, you've got to look outside. So I looked up, and there it was. It was the Gimbal craft. And the Gimbal craft was about 150, 200 foot up, and the front of the craft was open. I could clearly see a white craft with a red seat. And if you imagine you were sat in that seat and your feet were touching some kind of floor, the person in that craft was sat where his feet would be.
Okay. Okay, so again, now you're looking into the craft and you're seeing inside of it now. Is that correct?
That's right. To
Okay.
me, it was completely open. There was
Okay.
no front on the craft. It
But
was
that's not the way
completely.
it was the first time. So it's almost like now there's a level of insight that you have. Maybe you have to wonder if maybe that, like that switch that you had talked about now, if your perception was a little bit more. Before you were seeing it more from the shell, now you're seeing it more from maybe their perspective.
Maybe it was closed and I could just see straight through.
Right, right.
Um, but it was a kind of moment that you you can never forget. You
Okay, so
can't unsee it. Once
this
you
was
see
broad
this, it's in your
daylight
mind.
though. I'm looking at the picture. It's not like you're out in the woods somewhere. I'm looking at the sketch that you've drawn, and I've got, if I understand the sketch, I've got the three of them here. I've got the one in the middle where it looks like the people are sitting there. Then the occupant on the right with the red, and then on the left, I'm not 100% sure. But what strikes me about this sketch and about this encounter is you're broad daylight. You're in your garden. It's not like you're
That's right.
out in the boonies somewhere.
That's right. That's what makes it even more strange. And the craft is very white. And as I look at the craft and I look away from the red seat, which really does take your attention, there's something about that seat. Just below the wings of the craft, and that you can't really call them wings because they're not very big, but just below the wings of the craft, the next thing I noticed was two long rectangular um, parts of the craft, but they were not attached. They were either side of the vehicle, the craft, and they were quite long, and they were moving very, very slightly, as if they were shifting, vibrating.
Mhm.
They were always moving, constantly moving, but they were not attached. I could see between the rectangles and the craft.
You know, Dave, when you and I were talking a while back, kind of privately, I mentioned to you an interesting correlation between that and the book of Zechariah, where it talks about what some believe are a quote unquote UFO there in Zechariah. And you have a woman obviously sitting there, but then on either side, you have these winged creatures that are connected but are not connected. Now, I'm not trying to force the two together, but there's a very similar concept there. The same thing in the book of Ezekiel, where you have these winged creatures that are there, attached, but not attached. Again, though, what you saw was a spatial reality. It's not a vision. It's not smoke. It's not fog. It was something that was there in our time-space continuum. Is that correct?
100%. It was a physical object that you could really see, and I'm sure if you tapped it with your hand, it would go bong bong bong. It
Uh-huh,
was
uh-huh.
real. It was
Okay,
absolutely real.
so what was this encounter like in a personal way? In other words, before you were thinking, they were responding. Now it seems like there's a little bit more of an intuitive connection. What is the concept between the two of you now?
Well, the person on the craft was not looking at me. They were looking, as you're seeing in the picture. They're looking off to the right as we look, and and that's how I looked at the seat for quite a long time, and that's how I looked at the long rectangles for quite a long time. And obviously, at some point in my mind, I must have thought, "Wow, this is amazing! I can't believe I'm seeing it," which was the trigger for him to then look at myself.
Okay, and so then what happens there when you two finally connect? Tell us about that experience.
Well, what happened was that he tried to erase my memory. I remember it very, very well. In fact, when I recount this story and I think about it, I can actually remember the process of them erasing my memory. So right now, as I think about it, I can actually feel that process of him trying to erase my mind. Even right now, I can feel it.
Mm. So it's something that stayed with you. Let me ask you this, and I don't want to ask leading questions, but I'm interested based on all the research that we have done and others. I'm not saying that it was a malevolent, but was it an invasive? In other words, was it something that you didn't want and you were trying to resist, or was it something agreed upon, or did you feel like it was more forced on you?
Forced on me, and I was trying to resist.
Okay.
I'm not sure why, but I actually took quite an exception to it. And I remember thinking to myself, no, 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 you're not going to erase my memory. I'm going to remember this. And as a kind of self-defense mechanism, I started to replay in my mind the previous pictures that we've seen of the big black craft with a molten bottom, and then myself being projected inside and looking at the three occupants, looking at the console. I started to replay all of that in my mind to him. And
Okay.
as he was trying to erase my mind, I was pushing back with the pictures and the knowledge that you're not the first person I've met. This has happened to me before.
Now, as you look back and think, the craft, the thing that you're seeing, is it in any way affecting the environment? Are the trees moving? Is the air around it? Is it having a direct effect on the environment in a physical way?
No, it's totally silent. And no, there's, you can't, apart from the long rectangles vibrating and moving constantly, you would never know it was there.
Okay. All right, so it wants to take your memory away. You say no. Tell us how this encounter ended.
So, during the process of resisting, for lack of a better word, I actually said to the being, look, the last people I met, I really wished I could talk to them, and I wanted to get to know them. Why don't you park your vehicle in my garden and come in and have a chat with me, rather than trying to erase the memory? Can we talk? And the being actually said to me, don't worry, I'm just doing research. Go back inside, whilst trying to erase my memory. And it was very clear, totally like someone was talking to you, but it was in your head. And I said to the person, as I'm still trying to defend off the memory erasement, okay, I'm happy to go inside, but you're not going to erase my memory. And so I walked inside, and at this point, I agreed to walk inside, but it did feel like I was in sort of slow motion. I wouldn't say I was almost a daze. I was pushed inside, if you see but I did say, okay, I'll go inside, because I gave ground there, but not on the memory erasement, if you see what I'm trying to say.
I do. So it ended in a peaceable time. In other words, there wasn't a big fight or anything. It simply, you went inside.
So I went inside, and the next thing I remember, I don't know how long I was in there for, all that has disappeared from my memory. And the next thing I heard was loud fighter craft engines. That's what took me out of the trance. So I hear these engines, and I go back outside. The craft is gone, but in the distance, I could see a military fighter aircraft banked. So so I could see the top of it, and it was doing a big circle in my view.
Are military crafts common in your area?
Well, afterwards, yes, but before, no.
So would you say that there's more military aircraft traffic in that area now than there has been before?
Yeah, so after the event, I got overflown by aircraft almost every day.
Really?
Yeah, same time of day, every day.
Were you visited by anybody? Did you notice any people outside? Do you ever feel like there was any more surveillance of you in any way, shape, or form?
I do have a feeling that they're coming. I don't think they've come yet. I don't know why, but I've got a feeling they're coming. But I kept quiet. I didn't tell anybody. So I guess from their point of view, I didn't go to the press or tell all my friends, because I just thought, who on earth is going to believe this? Not only do I have one story, I've now got two stories, and everyone's going to think I'm a fruitcake. So there's no way I can tell people. So I didn't tell anyone.
Yeah. Okay. So tell us then, how long and when was the next time you saw somebody? Another visitor from them? So
you can imagine that's quite a big event in your life, and you're thinking to yourself, wow, what's just happened? And it's all over. These things only last, 5-6 minutes. And 1 week goes by, 2 weeks go by, 3 weeks go by, nothing. Normality sets in on the fourth week. So it's a work day. It's 7 a.m. I know it's 7 a.m. because my alarm's going off. And as I reach from my bed to the bedside cabinet to turn off the alarm, I accidentally hit a big glass of water. And the glass of water hits a whole load of electrical sockets. So I'm in bed, I know it's gone over the sockets, and I'm thinking to myself, oh no, I've got to get up. So I jump out of bed really quick. I run out of my bedroom into the hallway where I have a towel cupboard, get loads of towels, and as I hold the towels and as I just re-enter the bedroom, that same person from the craft, is in my bedroom.
Okay, now that's the sketch that I'm looking at right here, and we'll pull that up in a little bit. It's were you scared? What was your reaction coming back and seeing something in your room that should not be there?
It was honestly, I couldn't speak. I was like a rabbit in headlights. I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. I was totally shocked, and I mean really, really shocked. And normally I would say something, like hello or something. But honestly, nothing could come out. I was totally shocked.
Mm-hmm.
And he wasn't wearing a helmet for a start, whereas in my previous two pictures, you'll always see helmets. So there was no helmet, so I saw his face.
Mm-hmm.
I saw his body, very, very lean body, same sort of height as myself, 5'10", 5'11". We were very close. We're talking 3 meters, perhaps 4 meters, but 3 meters away from each other, very, very close. And as you'll see in the picture, he had some kind of apparatus around him. And the only way I can describe it to you is if you imagine a hula hoop. There was a hula hoop around his head, there was a hula hoop around his midriff, and there was a hula hoop around his kind of knees.
Mm-hmm.
And the hula hoop was made of what I can only describe as cloud.
Yeah.
So imagine cloud.
Yeah.
In a hula hoop shape.
Yeah, when we talked again, and we're going back to some of the stuff that you and I have kind of talked off record. It's very interesting, the connection with the Bible and clouds. You have the story in the Christian New Testament of Jesus being received up into a cloud. You have the cloudy pillar that led the children of Israel in the Jewish scriptures through the wilderness. So the Bible talks about in the apocalypse that the Messiah will come back with clouds. So it's interesting when you use the term cloud. That was the best way that you could describe what those circles were, almost like halos around his body in a cloudy form. That's
right. They're very thin, so I could see his body, I could see his face, but you couldn't miss the clouds. It was the strangest thing, ever. And as I looked at him, and as he was looking at me, there was no conversation. There was nothing. I think he was more startled that I came back in, or perhaps he thought he was cloaked, or perhaps he thought I couldn't see him, but I could see him, and I could see him plain as day. And he was kind of shocked that I could see him. I think that I had that kind of feeling. And as he looked at me, he must have thought, "Uh-oh, he can see me." And he walked straight through the cabinet, straight through the wall on a second floor, and he walked straight through, as if it wasn't there.
So he didn't materialize, but he walked through the material wall.
He did.
He didn't dematerialize, he just walked through it.
If he did it very, very fast. The last thing I saw, and that's a thing that's etched on my brain, is the cloud was the last thing I saw as he went through the wall. So if you imagine, maybe the cloud opened up the wall, I don't know.
Right.
But he went through, and the last thing to go through was the cloud. The cloud followed him through, is what I'm trying to say.
So was there any kind of real detailed conversation or communication, or it's just like, he sees you, I got to get out of here?
I genuinely think he was amazed I could see him. It begs the question, how long has he been in my house? What's he doing at 7 a.m.? Where was he? All these questions come to mind. But no, I think he was shocked that I could see him.
So this is a little bit of a leading question, I know, but obviously you walk in, you're scared, you're in shock, maybe is the better word. After that, or even in that moment, was there a sensation of fear? Was there a sensation of dread? Or was it just surprise? In other words, if I walk in and see somebody, I'm going to be scared. What are you doing here? as opposed to you're surprised to see them, but you don't feel the sense of dread from that person. Or let me say it like this: if I walked in and happened to see my mom, who lives in a whole other state, I would be shocked, but I wouldn't be scared of her. Was there a familiarity, or was it both shock and scared? If you understand my question.
I absolutely was not scared, but I was totally shocked.
Okay.
I was amazed. It was, is this real? Am I seeing what am I seeing? There's water pouring down my bedside cabinet. I just can't believe it. A total disbelief. I would describe it as.
Okay. Let's move forward. That guy walks out of your room. You're standing there literally with your jaw on the ground. Tell us about the next encounter that you had.
So this is within the last 6 months.
Okay.
So very quiet. And time-wise, we're talking about 4 years.
Okay. Now let me ask you this real quick, simply to get context. At this point, had you been beginning to research any kind of UFO phenomenon? And then secondly, had you even heard of the Tic-Tac video at this point?
No, never heard of it, ever.
Okay.
I just remember thinking to myself, I can't tell anybody about the story because no one's going to believe me. I mean, it was bad enough having the first experience, then it was strange enough having the second experience, and then finding somebody in your bedroom is just there. So I just didn't tell anyone.
Okay.
And then, of course, the videos through To the Stars Academy launched the videos, and the first one's the Tic-Tac, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. It's white. I've seen a white craft.
Mm-hmm.
And then the one they launched was the Gimbal, and the Gimbal video is the craft I saw.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm now thinking, oh, right, somebody else has actually seen the same craft. It's not just me. I'm not crazy.
Right.
I've got proof. Try and tell somebody my story before that video was released. No one would ever believe you. But now it has been released, people might believe me. So that's why I've started talking.
Okay. So it's 4 years, you're kind of quiet, and then what happens?
So I guess my interest is now aroused again over the whole everything that's happened to me. And I'm starting to watch things on Facebook and YouTube. And I'm starting to think, that really is the craft I saw. And there's lots of commentary on it, and people are saying, it's not an alien craft, it's a drone, or it's probably US military flying their latest prototypes, and I'm thinking to myself all the time, well, no, that's not right. I've actually seen it close up, and I know it's an alien craft. So I'm starting to relive the experience more as it comes through the press, which is about 6 months ago. So I'm at home and I'm watching something on television. It's the evening. It's probably about 9-10 p.m. And I get the same feeling again, to go into the kitchen. So I get up, I go into the kitchen, and just as I enter the kitchen, and in the next picture, you'll see a blue breakfast bar, which is at the end of the kitchen, 3 stools where we have our breakfast, and in front of the stools there was a very golden flat disc. It looked like a shield, and it was rotating, and it was bright. We're talking gold, real gold, and it looked like a shield. So there was the middle of the shield, I would say, was a dinner plate size, and then it sunk into itself, like a roll, and then the outer edge was forward again. So it sort of went out, in, and out, if that makes sense.
Okay.
And it did 2 or 3 rotations, but quite slowly, and it shrank into itself and disappeared. Okay,
so describe the shrinking into itself. That's interesting to me. What does that mean?
Well, imagine every corner. It's a circle. Every side of the circle going in at the same time to a pinpoint.
Okay.
It went into itself and
okay.
just.
So it got to that pinpoint and then gone, but there was no direct communication or anything like that with it.
No, no.
What do you think was the point of that? In other words, this is something that I'm interested in, Dave. What, as I'm looking at that, why? Do you feel like you're stumbling onto something? Or do you feel like that they're trying to show you something? What is the point of it?
I don't, for a long time, I honestly didn't know, and it really was a weird feeling. It gave me a very, very strange feeling. It was more. I had more of a weird feeling than seeing the first craft, seeing the second craft, seeing the guy in the room. That gave me more of a weird feeling. So it must have been admitting some kind of thought. Maybe stay away. Maybe it was just telling me that. I don't know. But it gave me
Okay, so let me, if you don't mind, and it's just so fascinating, let me back up just a bit and get the gist. Describe to me, in a little bit more detail, if you will, this coffee bar, where you are, and then I see in the pictures that we're going to bring up on the screen, you've got wisps around this circle again. I'm interested in how much it had the same similar wisps, maybe of what you saw in your room.
Yeah. They were very, very. Imagine shoelaces. So we're talking very thin, but they were around the shield.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah, not as big as the cloud one that I saw with the guy, but definitely the same type of thing, but much, much thinner.
Now, would you say this location was it spiritually charged? Did it have, I mean, was there any reason that this would have been a location possibly to experience an event like this?
No, it was the kitchen. It was the breakfast bar at the end of the
Right.
kitchen. It was so weird. I mean, why wasn't it not outside? Why was it not in the sky? Why was it in the house again?
Yeah.
So I've got to complete the story.
Okay, go right ahead.
So as I'm thinking, as the days pass, I'm thinking to myself, I just really want to know what this disc was. I mean, it was so odd. And I tried to communicate with the being. Because I was so traumatized is not the right word, but I was so keen to find out what it was that I saw, I basically asked. So I opened my mind and I tried to connect with him. I visualized his face. I reran everything in my mind and I said, what was it that I saw?
Mm.
And the voice and the thoughts I got back was, that's my ship.
Mm. Okay, so you actually tried to reach out and connect with a being that you had witnessed in your room.
That's right.
And you got a voice back. Would you say the voice was external or internal?
It's in your head. There's no doubt, but a very distant. Not the same as when I've been very close to these beings. It was more. You felt that this person was miles away, but it was still in your mind.
Now, in one of the pictures that we have, it's very clear. It looks like the being appears to be almost reptilian to some degree.
Yeah.
Okay.
To be honest, I don't know what a reptilian looks like. I have no idea. But the picture of the portrait of the being was done by a friend because I'm not very good at drawing.
Uh-huh.
So she's drawn what I've told her is from description, and
Okay.
and that is about as close as you can imagine. Someone else drawing the picture for you.
Sure.
But yes, but from what I understand, I don't know what a reptilian looks like.
But you feel like that what you saw at the coffee bar at the end of the bar, that was the same being in the same event that you saw in your room. Only he's saying it is his ship in some way, shape, or form.
That's right. Everything that's happened to me is very weird and very odd.
No. Now, would you mind backing up just a little bit and telling us, as you look back on it, the sensation of the colors, just the appearance again, as when you saw it? Was it vivid? Was it muted? Did it feel like it was connecting with the environment around it, or did it feel just totally out of place, if that makes sense?
Totally out of place. The goldest thing you've ever seen in your life. We're talking gold, amazingly gold. It almost had a kind of Egyptian feel to it. I don't know why I thought that, but
wow. That's an interesting take. Yeah. Okay. All right. So before your phone burns up, and we have another digital snafu because somebody out there does not want us telling the story. Take us forward. You're told by this person, "That's my ship." Okay. So what does Dave do from there, and what's the next experience?
So uh, this this is probably 4 weeks again after the rotating disc episode, um, and I've asked the question, "What is it?" And I'm in. It's the same sort of time. It's about 10 o'clock at night, and I'm sat on the sofa and I'm watching TV. And the picture you'll see there is the fireplace and the television.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a modern house, so it's a very square room. And on the left of the TV, there's a uplighter, and on the right of the TV, there's an uplighter. And they're switched off because I'm watching television. It's night, and all of a sudden, I get this huge static electricity. Every single hair on my body is up. You know, your arms are prickly. There is static everywhere, and you know something's happening. Of course, I'm thinking, what's happening in the kitchen again?
Right. Right.
But as I kind of almost get up to go into the kitchen, I noticed that the right-hand side of the television, that's that part from the television to the wall, was fuzzy.
Mm.
It was not sharp. And the only way I can describe it to you is if you imagine that it was superimposed. It was as if the right hand side of the wall was on television, and the left hand side was as it should be, plaster and paint.
Wow. Okay. So it was an image that you felt was projected onto it.
That's right, 100%.
And you're feeling a sense, a physicality now of static electricity. That's the sensation.
A lot. You know, we're talking amazing amounts. You know, every single hair on your body was up.
Wow. Okay. All right. So go right ahead.
So I'm thinking it's this guy, and I'm
Uh-huh.
thinking you've got this weird cloaking device with the cloud is probably activated, and you're behind this wall, or you're stood there, and you're kind of, you know, you might think your camouflage is very good, but actually, I'm telling you, your camouflage is rubbish, and I
Mm-hmm.
know that you're there.
Uh-huh.
So I'm using my mind, and I'm doing exactly what I've done before, and I'm saying to the person, I want to talk to you. I know you're there. The camouflage isn't working. You know, I want to talk to you, but there's no response. So I stand up and I start walking towards the wall with this fuzzy picture, and I put my hand on the wall, and it is like electric, you know, real kind of fizzy feeling.
Uh-huh.
Um, you, yeah, it's hard to explain, but you can feel the fizz on your hand as I touched it. And I was saying to the person, look, I really want to talk to you.
Uh-huh.
And I don't remember anything else. I don't remember
Wow.
going to bed. I don't remember anything.
What is the next time on the time space continuum timeline? What's the next moment that you're sentiently aware of?
I think waking up the next morning.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's a lot. That's how many hours of time loss would you say? 6, 7, 8, 9 hours of time loss?
Yeah, so it was around 10 o'clock in the evening, and I woke up about 7 a.m. Yeah.
Wow. Now, were there any other people in the home, in the abode with you?
Yes, I have a partner, and
Okay.
she stays in bed. She starts very early in the morning.
Okay, so but she was not aware of any of that whatsoever.
No.
Wow. Were there any physical marks on your body after?
No. I remembered it clearly, but no, I just don't know what happened. I have no idea.
Okay, so how do you process that when you go forward? I mean, at 13 when you had that encounter, there was we talked about the switch being flipped and intuitive. Was there things happening now after this event or others that were changing your frame of reference, your life, anything that was tangible that you begin to sense?
Well, the only thing I can think of course, is that as it from when the disc arrived until this experience, I've got two more, by the way, after this, that I've become more and more the Tic-Tac video and the Gimbal video are getting more and more coverage, There are now more and more programs on television. You know, there's lots of people know about this now. It's in the newspapers.
Mm-hmm.
And all I can think of is perhaps as the world is waking up to the fact that this is probably an alien craft, and you know, the Pentagon has admitted it is.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, that we're talking about it more, and perhaps they're coming to see what we know. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But as we are going over this particular episode, then it's become stronger again.
Yeah. So take us to the next one. You said that there were two more.
Right.
You go on with life. I mean, nothing happens, but you knew you had that experience. Take us to the next step.
So there's two more. So the next one is very, very quick. I'm in bed, I'm asleep, and I get woken up. And I wake up and I think, oh, what's just woken me up? And I look out of my window and I've got some blinds. Sometimes the drapes are closed and sometimes the drapes are open. But on this occasion, the drapes were open, but the blinds were down. But the blinds were on the outside of the window, not inside of the window. And I wake up and I'm thinking to myself, the blinds are on the outside of the window. They should be on the inside of the window. And then I said, and this is absolutely true, I said, you idiots, you can't even get the blinds right.
So you felt like what you were seeing was a projection, or was not real, or was being altered.
I don't know. That's. I mean, I could have been dreaming it. You know, this could be just a strange dream. But I woke up and I saw the glass, and then I saw the blind. I'm thinking to myself, this is crazy. You know.
Did it feel like a virtual reality experience, kind of a thing? Like they were trying to create a virtual reality for you?
It did. It felt like, as I woke up and I saw the blinds were on the outside of the window, I kind of thought to myself, they're here again, and they're pretending this is my bedroom, perhaps, or they're trying to, they're using camouflage again, or whatever it is that they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But they've got it wrong. And I actually
Wow.
said, you idiots, you've got it wrong. And as I said, you idiots, you've got it wrong, about 2 or 3 seconds afterwards, I went straight back to sleep.
Wow.
Yeah. And of course, I
Okay.
woke up and the blinds were on the right side of the window.
About what time was this that this took place?
It was early. It would have been about 4 or 5 a.m. in the morning.
Okay, and again, your partner, no one else, nobody else was aware of anything that was going on. It was totally isolated.
Totally isolated. I woke up, I saw it, I made a joke of it, and went back to bed.
Okay. Now, at this point, you haven't shared anything with anybody because you don't want to be known as the alien guy in town.
I haven't told anybody because, I mean, all these experiences are just so strange.
Yeah.
I absolutely don't want to tell anybody because it's just crazy.
So take us to this last one then. What? Where were you?
So yes, the last one. The last one is a kind of a feeling that at night time, again, it's this weird vibration. It wasn't a hum, but it was the vibration. And the vibration woke me up. A bit like when I looked out the window and the blinds were on the wrong side of the glass. It woke me up. And as I woke up, I looked up to my ceiling and there was no ceiling.
Mm.
The ceiling was totally translucent, and it was as if I was looking at the stars. And as I looked to my left, and my partner was in the bed, and she was asleep. I looked to my right, and I could see the window, and that was there. And I looked up, and there was no ceiling. You could just see stars. It was really, really vivid. A blackness and stars everywhere. A really amazing view, and I must have stayed awake for half an hour. It felt like before I just nodded off again. It's as if you're sent to sleep.
Yeah.
But I was awake for half an hour looking at it. It was just amazing.
There was no communication then during this time?
No communication.
You were simply able to view the stars, view the sky as if there was no ceiling.
That's right. Yeah, I'm close up, much closer.
But as far as you can tell, there's no communication going on between you and the beings.
That's right. Yeah, it was just the view of the.
Wow. About what time would you say this was?
I don't know, but it would have. I think it's the same sort of time again. I think it's about 4 a.m. That kind of time. You're asleep and you're sound asleep, but you get woken up.
Mm-hmm.
It wakes you.
But you've mentioned now several times the humming, the buzzing, the vibration. Can you delve into that just a little bit more? That vibration, that humming, isn't an. I know it's hard, but is it something that feels out of place? Is it something that's reaching inside of you? Is it something you're hearing? All of the above. What is it as you look back on it?
It's really hard to explain, but if you imagine that you're sound asleep and someone wants to wake you up, so
Mm-hmm.
they'll come to you and they'll say, "David, David, wake up," and they'll kind of shake you,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll come to life, if you see
Uh
what I
huh.
mean.
Uh-huh.
Imagine that, but you get a vibration, and it's like someone's calling your name, but they're not.
Mm.
Wake up because you've been told to wake up. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Again, we are constantly interested in the connectivity. There's a story in the Jewish scriptures in the Old Testament about the prophet Samuel, who was a young boy who was sleeping, and he heard a voice. He thought it was the old man. He went in. The old man said, "It's not me. It's the Lord calling you." And that happened 2 or 3 times, and it was waking him out of his sleep. And when you start looking at that dimensional perspective like that, it's obvious in the things that you're talking about that we're dealing with something that is real. In other words, it's not a mental game we're playing, but it's also obvious that they're able to move in and out of a dimension. We're in our dimension, but they're simply not. They're moving in and out. And I'm interested in that vibration, that feeling, that sensation that you're talking about. What was the takeaway from being able to look up at the stars? In other words, as you look back on it, what were you taking away from that?
Well, it was. I do have another story actually, which may have a bearing on that story.
Okay, well, before you do that, then let me ask you maybe a quick follow-up. The sky, you're laying in bed, you're looking above. Is it your sky? Is it a familiar sky? Or do you feel like you were somewhere else observing something? Because you mentioned something about the Egyptian feel.
Hmm.
The sky that you're looking at, was it a familiar sky, or was it possible you were looking at some other sky?
It was not familiar. No, it wasn't. It was. I wear glasses, so at night they would not be on. But when I woke up, I could see the stars vividly. I didn't need glasses. They were
Mm-hmm.
so everything was really well defined. But no, I didn't recognize anything up there. No
Wow.
dipper or anything like that.
Okay. All right, so go ahead. You were going to tell us the next story.
Yeah, it's connected really to that story. This might have happened either just before or just after that one, and it was just a case where I woke up in the middle of the night, and I really wanted to go to the toilet. So I get out of bed, and I'm quite lucky. I've got 3 toilets in my house, and I decided to use the one downstairs because everyone's upstairs, they're asleep. But if you go downstairs, it's quieter.
Uh-huh.
So but when I woke up, everywhere was pitch black. It was as if there was no light anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so I get out of bed and I'm kind of feeling the walls. I'm thinking, God, normally there's some ambient light, there's some street light.
Right.
I can normally see something, but it was absolutely pitch black. And anyway, I'm bundling around. I'm dying for the toilet, and I just couldn't find it. I couldn't find my own toilet.
So let me ask the obvious question then. Were you were you in your house? I know that sounds like an odd question, but how did you find your way back to your bed?
Um, the I guess the reason I don't tell anybody that story, and the reason I don't tell anybody that story is because obviously the implication is I wasn't in my room.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to believe I wasn't. If you see what I'm trying
Yeah,
to say.
right. So that goes back to. Let me ask you then just a follow-up question, and I don't want to get into. I don't want to get into too specifics, but have you ever done any research into the area where you live, in the actual vicinity of where you live? Um, regarding any kind of occultic activity or history or something like that would make that more of a hotspot area for you?
No, it's actually a new build house. So the place was greenfield land, and then a big developer came along and built, a suburb. So there was nothing there that I know of. It was
Right.
fields.
Wow. So you're stumbling around in the dark, and then again, it really seems like now that it is very centered. You've not had any other experiences outside of your home, and really in a brief window during certain times in the evening.
That's right. I've got one more story.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Funny.
We're all ears, man. That's what we're here for.
So within the last 3 or 4 weeks, I'm in my car and I'm stuck at some traffic lights, and I'm looking out the window, waiting for them to turn green. And I look up and I see a silver ball, bright silver, probably the size of I don't know, maybe 10 meters in diameter. So not very big, but bright. And it's going over my car, and I could see it going off in the distance. And I'm thinking to myself, am I the only person who can see this? It was quite low. It was probably about 500 foot off the ground.
Were you the only person? Did you notice any other?
No, but the traffic lights went to green and everyone pulled off. And I'm looking at my window thinking, that was a silver ball I just saw fly across my car. Strange.
Now, in the time that you've been in this house, or in any other previous time growing up, because this really started when you were 13, have you had any poltergeist experiences?
No.
No. So it's been a definite, then each time is a definite experience. Have you felt like there's been any message, that has been tried to convey, or is it simply an awakening?
I do have another story for you. You've just jogged my memory.
Go ahead.
So, I'm not sure how old I was, but it's about 10 years ago, and it was a friend's funeral. And it's not a close friend. I was close friend of the person whose person I don't want to give too much away.
Sure.
He was getting buried, and I was in the audience, if you like, in the church, and it was quite busy. It was very packed, but I wasn't close family. And as I look forward, the casket is in front, the person doing the sermon's on the right, and on the stage on the left, I could see the person whose funeral it was. He was at his own funeral.
Wow.
And he was in like a bluey, silvery light. If any way I can describe it.
Now, had you ever had, I'd asked you about any kind of poltergeist experience. Had you ever had anything like that before?
No.
Yeah. Okay, so here's the question. I asked you this off camera, just when you and I were chatting. And again, I want to be delicate how I ask this, but growing up or within your family or whether it's distant or close, has there been any reports or allegations of ritual sexual abuse, of spiritualism, of anything that you might be able to reach out and say, well, this kind of opens some doors in some areas?
The only thing I can think of is that my great granny, she was very psychic, and she used to read the tea leaves, because back in those days that was what they did. And everyone said she was very good at it. If she read your tea leaves, what she told you was good, kind of thing. And that's the only conscious link I've got.
Yeah. Well, Dave, what's the future? What is? I mean, are you trying to reach out? Is it one of those things where you're just you are where you are? What do you think the future holds?
Well, I have honestly no idea. But I do think I've recently watched Dr. Stephen Greer, and he's done this new film where he tries to talk to aliens. Basically, he calls them in. He meditates, and he gets them to come to him, and he's got some amazing footage. It must be said.
Yeah.
I genuinely think I could do that.
Okay, so you think now that's almost like a medium kind of a thing. You think you could be more open to that?
Well, I can definitely talk to them, and I can definitely see them. 100%. I mean, this story is the whole story that we've covered is quite unbelievable. And the only thing I want to tell you and your listeners is that it's absolutely 100% the truth. I'm not in any way saying anything that is unreal. Everything I told you is real. And I genuinely think that I've got some kind of link through my experiences that I could probably talk to one of these beings, or interface in such a way that they communicate back. Okay,
so here's the $64,000 question. What do you think? There's several aspects of what some people believe. Some people believe that they are that they are from another planet. Some people believe that they are interplanetary. They are from within the planet. Some people believe that they are dimensional, a multiverse kind of a thing. Some people believe that they are demonic, posing, that they are malevolent, and they pose as this to cause confusion. I'm not asking you to be the authority on that, but I'm asking for your opinion. What is your take on that?
Well, I mean, the truth is, I don't know. But I do think that the beings I saw first and the being I saw second is probably the same beings. But because of the gap in time, it wouldn't surprise me if that was old technology, the big black ball disc with the, lava bottom. That was old technology, and now they've got new technology where it's white and there is it's it looks more sci-fi to us. I believe it's the same people in different craft.
Yeah. So, but there was never any sensation of dread or fear in any of these encounters, more of a sensation of strangeness, but not terror built into them. Would that be an accurate statement?
That's right, yeah. I never felt in harm's way at any point.
So what was your feeling then when you saw the gimbal the Tic-Tac video? What was your feeling like? What did you turn to someone and go, "Hey, that I saw that"? What was your response?
It was like, thank God, because otherwise I am completely nuts, And seeing the gimbal video and knowing it's real, it was an absolutely crazy moment. But one of the reasons I bumped into you guys, and I'll tell the story so that everyone knows it, is that there was a forum on Facebook, and there were 3 or 4 well-known UFO researchers, and they were saying how the gimbal video, the Tic-Tac video, are all USA-based new technology.
Yeah.
Of course, I wrote on the forum, well, I can tell you right now, you're wrong, and I can tell you right now, they come from a different planet. I've seen them, and that's how I bumped into you guys. So you picked up on it. Well, tell us more. That's how.
Right. Yeah, because a lot of people in the UFO community, and there are different branches, from the John Keel, Jacques Vallée branch to others, but a lot of people in the UFO community looked at that and said, "Listen, you're just looking at that's a skunkworks technology. That's a drone. That's a new technology." But one of the things that always struck us about the video is that the fighter pilots that are watching that, they may not know everything that's out there, but they're comfortable with technology. Sure. They're shocked by what they're seeing because they're not looking at something that they have only better. They're saying, how do you explain that? And those are 2 different things there. So it's a very interesting thing. And then when you take some of these pictures that you have, which our listeners have been seeing as we're talking, and some of these sketches, one of the things that's very profound is it does, you talk about the molten lava underneath. Well, again, we're big into connecting dots, and in the book of Job, it talks about that sea of glass in the heavens that has a molten look to it. And so we're constantly connecting, what are we seeing? What are we actually interpreting? And I have often believed, David, that we use the term spirit, but you could just as equally interchange the word dimension for that. And I don't think that would be an injustice to either side like that. And it's very interesting because one of these things that the experiences like you and so many other people have is it pulls those 2 together. It pulls that science technology, but it also pulls that ancient religious side, and it seems to blend those 2 together. And it's a very, very fascinating event. And the question now is just, for the rest of your life, what lies ahead, and that's going to be an interesting study, maybe to come back and I'd really like to maybe come back in a little while and even as your memory becomes fresher and clearer, more detailed, and maybe even talk about some of the things that are going on in some of these sightings and other things like that. I think it would be great.
Yeah, I certainly don't think it's a closed book. I mean, no. I have an overwhelming feeling that we will meet again. These alien people. There's no doubt about that. And I think you're right. So I think, I've witnessed them walk through walls, and there's lots of people's accounts, biblical and modern day. I've seen camouflage technology. I've seen the craft. I've heard nothing, and I've seen them float and Yeah, I've seen the suits, and I've spoken to the people telepathically, and I've seen the person up close, and he was not from this world. He was not.
Yeah.
Was he from inner Earth? Was he from miles and galaxies away? You know, the technology they must be using to get here is totally different to our technology.
Right.
You know.
Right.
So
Yeah. But you seem to sense and know that this is not here. That's one of the things we get from a lot of the different interviews or case studies that we've studied. Is there's an intuitive understanding. This is not of this dimension, this locale. Something is different here, and well, I think you're spot on. And this has been a great time talking to you. Thank you so very much. We're looking forward to sharing Dave's story, and I think, you know, like you said, the book has not been finished. There are more chapters, and there are chapters being written around the world, and it is definitely drawing us closer and closer. Thanks so much, man. I appreciate you talking with us today.